Hi there. Good morning. I'm Chris Searles. I'm the director and founder of BioIntegrity, and I run the projects Rainmaking with Trees and Strategic Watering, Deep Rehydration, Securing Forests, and Forest Moisture Circulation Stimulation. We just completed the Central Texas projects officially on the last watering was on July 2nd, but then after the floods, I went back and did some more work in early August. I think it was August 3rd through 5. And so what I have for you here today is just the quick walkthrough of all the correlations, well, not all the correlations, but of all the correlations that I can squeeze into this video that took place during the waterings. What you'll hear kind of repetitively is that I go to the place, I do the waterings, and that day or within 24 hours, there's raindrops or a big cut in the heat waves. And let's see a few more outlines. The Central Texas projects began on Wednesday, April 9th in Harper, Texas. I did about 4 waterings there. Then the following Monday, I went to Lakey and started working in South Central Texas in Lakey. And I basically concentrated in Lakey for the next 2 weeks. I did one more watering in Harper that first day. Then I started to blend Lakey with Rio Frio over the sort of middle section of the project. At one point I was in only Rio Frio for a few days. These two towns are only 9 or so miles apart, or these two areas rather, about 9 miles apart. And that's the general shape of the way things were in South Texas. I also, about week number 2 or 3 of the project, I was already doing events in Central Texas for Earth Day and things like that. I was also doing a little bit of spritzing here in my home at the trees here. I built some sponges here in August, and went back and did sponges in Lakey in early August. All those things help with the general cooling and holding of the cool in the atmosphere. But I was moving back and forth during the bulk of the Central Texas projects, between the Austin area and the Lakey area. And so you'll hear those references made as I read through this. One last thing is, oh yeah, well, there's a report. There's a Central Texas projects report now. These correlations are in the report, although there's so many correlations, it's not just a correlations report, it's actually a full report of the project. And then what you'll find is that there's a calendar attached to that report that is what I'm working off of here. We're still completing that calendar in the digital domain, but you see all this mumbo jumbo back here. I've got a bunch of stuff here, and there's a ton of information compiled into a simple presentation in our digital calendar. And so what you can do, if you prefer, is just go back and look through the digital calendar and really trace the steps and the phenomena that occurred as I was doing the waterings in this project. Central Texas was in one of its 4 worst droughts in all of the last 110 years of history. The first 4, the other 3 big droughts were 1917 to 1919, then about 40 years later, 1951 to 1957, 2011 to 2015. Everybody remembers the Bastrop fires. And then again around 2020, 2021 to present, July 4th, 2025. We've been in exceptionally deep drought. This is the worst of worst case scenarios. There's a couple of important other things to mention here. Because the floods were obviously the worst disaster in recent American history, it's important to mention each of those 4 catastrophic droughts ended with catastrophic flood. It's a strange thing about Texas. We have weather whiplash here. Weather whiplash is a historic thing. Flooding of the rivers is a historic thing. And hopefully we can move forward with more know-how on how to stay out of harm's way from here on forward. Because I don't think we can stop these giant 100-year and 50-year and climate change derailed cycles from occurring. Okay, I've said a lot. Let me get into the correlations real quick. again, I went to Lakey the second week of the watering. So the first week I was in Harper, which is just a little west of Fredericksburg. And what I noticed there is that things looked awful from drought in that area. But when I finished on the second day and drove home, it was already greening up miraculously. It was unbelievable. I've got all this footage on my phone. There's everything I'm telling here is backed up on the phone with snapshots and video and other forms of data documentation. Someday we'll have the resources to pull all that stuff out, but I've literally got, hundreds or thousands of hours of video, and you can see when we begin the day 3 that things are really, really improved in the area, just from doing this thing of watering the root ball of the tree that you see back here. The biggest trees I can find, I water the root balls slowly with the trickle buckets you see there, the 5-gallon buckets, and within hours you've got a system that is moving moisture, sharing the forced moisture circulation across the landscape so that all of the vegetation in the landscape can green up. And yeah, week 1 in Harper, day 2 on the drive home, it's like, holy cow, this really works. Again, I'm always amazed at how green places will become before rainfall just from watering big trees at the root ball. Then week 2, when I shifted over to Lakey, I did 5 waterings there, and on the 5th watering, day 2 in Lakey, I did what I call the rainmaking with trees technique. And the next morning, we had transpiration rain over site. There's footage of this in previous videos, just this miraculous little shower right there at the place where I had watered the day before to try and get rain, to stimulate rainfall. That was rain number 1. That morning, that little transpiration rain. Then I did 3 more waterings that day and went home, and about 3 days later, Lakey got its second good rain. I don't claim direct correlation with that, but it did happen. Week number 3, I returned to Lakey on Monday the 21st. I did 2 waterings in Lakey. The next morning, we had drizzle and fog over my sites. I did 3 waterings in Lakey on the 22nd, and that night we got our first good rain, or roughly about an inch of rain that fell at a right pace and just pleased everyone to no end. That was it, because usually when we get rain, then I stop watering so the system can cycle on its own. So I went home the next day on the 23rd, and Austin got a good rain on the 24th. That was nice, but I don't claim that one, just noting that one. I did an event again in Austin. I did one the week before and one that weekend as well. And by the end of that week, Sunday the 27th, it was 108 degrees in Rio Frio, Texas. So this is March 27th, and this is a strong reminder that we were headed into high heat. We were headed into intense, hot, dry summer. In fact, the National Fire Interagency group, the governmental group that does fire outlooks every month for the next 3 or 4 months, they had Central Texas in their high fire danger zone all the way until essentially the floods came. And the most amazing and important detail, and our number 1 goal of this project, was fires never came. They never came. We were able to continue the moisture movements across the landscape to the point where by mid-May, late May, somewhere in there were no hot spots and there were no fires anywhere in the Central Texas Project region, and that is still continuing. Today is August 17th. Okay, so then week number 4. Okay, so I went to Lakey on Monday the 28th, the beginning of week 4. It was beautiful and deep green drive on the way down. I did 2 waterings in Lakey. We had light rains that developed into a little more substantial rains that night. I could tell that we could do better, so this time I did stay. I did 3 more waterings in Lakey. The next day, we had dits and dats in the morning. I did a watering. We had showers on site. I filmed 4 showers over my sites that morning that were just local. This is now rain number 4. I watered again and left the next morning. It was misty and green as I drove out, and that night, Lakey and 3/4 of the Central Texas Project region got rain. That was rain number 5. The next day on the 2nd, Leakey was cooler than Austin, and Leakey has continued to be cooler than Austin and San Antonio from that point forward. I'm not sure that this is totally unusual, but Leakey is quite a bit further south than Austin, so it seems unusual. I did on the 3rd of May, Saturday, I did an event. I did a watering rather at Swede Pocket Park in Austin. We got good light rains overnight, and then I started the next watering sessions on Sunday the 4th. I drove to Leakey, did 2 more waterings. We got light drops and short rains the next morning. Now we're in week 5. On the 5th of May, I watered and we got light drops. That changed to fog. Then I shifted into Rio Frio that afternoon, watered there. We got light rains again that night, just little bits of probably not measured rain. The next day on May 6th, I went back to Rio Frio. I had with my site host there, I had a conversation that morning. This is only the 2nd watering. And so I'm talking with Morgan, my site host, and there's this beautiful fog. I keep mentioning the fog. That's one of the primary components of this forest moisture circulation. Proof that it's working is a cooling fog. And talking to Morgan, I'm looking around at the fog and starting to dissipate. And I say, hey, I gotta try and catch this fog. I think I'm able to get us some raindrops here. And he kind of looked at me like, okay, well, weirdo, but give it a shot, you know. And I did, and in fact, we got a downpour on site about 2 hours later. He wasn't there, but I have that on my camera also. I did another watering on the 6th that afternoon, and that was back in Leakey. And so that was rain number 7. Then I did another watering Leakey that afternoon. The next day, May 7th, there was light transpiration rain again in the morning as I was getting going. I went and watered in Rio Frio and Leakey, and as I drove home, things were just, again, incredibly beautiful. I could see moisture moving over the landscape in gentle, positive ways. Kerrville got some nice rain, and the next day there was a rain at my site where I had been telling him I was going to try to get drops. We had that happen, and he was saying they needed a soak. They hadn't had a soak, and we got that soak on the 8th, as well as a super local rain in Leakey on the 8th, both within 24 hours of me doing those waterings there. Then I did another watering in Austin on the 9th, another watering in Austin on the 10th, and Austin got light rain on the evening of the 10th. I did another watering in Austin on the 11th, and you could see that the light quality got darker, and that we had cooling winds. And then week 6 began. Week 6 is really important because week 6 was the week of the heat wave, and we beat the heat wave. So let me try and tell you this story real fast. On Monday the 12th, the forecasts by Apple were that Tuesday and Wednesday in Leakey would be 102 and 105, and AccuWeather said it would be 106 and 107. So I said, okay, time to really, really get to work on trying to prevent that from happening. Long story short, we prevented it from happening. According to the AccuWeather gauge, we got 99 and 102, and according to the Apple gauges, we got 99 and 99 in Leakey. So we were a good 6 degrees below what was predicted, and we stayed out essentially of the triple degree zone. Now let me tell you a little more about how that went down. I did 3 waterings between Leakey and Rio Frio on Monday the 12th. Then the D-Day, Tuesday, number 1, was watering in 2 waterings in Rio Frio, and by the end of the 2nd watering, I said on camera, I think we're winning. And then 1 watering in Rio Frio till late, or in Leakey rather, till late at night. And what we saw again is that we only hit about 99 that day. It was very comfortable also for a hot day. Meanwhile, our neighbor, Uvalde, Texas, just 30 miles down the road from Leakey and Rio Frio area, they hit 108. They were 9 degrees hotter than we were, just 30 miles away, because they didn't have the FMC running, in my opinion. The next day, May 14th, was D-Day number 2, and woke up and we were off to a good start. It was 66 degrees Fahrenheit in the morning, The skies felt cold and the clouds were real dreamy. These are all good signs that the moisture is present. Rain had come back into the forecast after watering. And I did watering number 1 in Rio Frio, and I actually say on camera, everything's going to be just fine. This is still in the morning. And then as we're moving into the early afternoon, you could feel it. A shift happened. That extreme heat of 107 that was supposed to take us, it just didn't manifest. There were early afternoon breezes. Things were just hanging out in the mid-90s. We had cooling clouds coming across. So I did another watering that afternoon in Lakey. And at the end of that watering, or towards the end of it, I'm saying we won. We did it. The temperatures were already, the hottest part of the day was already over. Uvalde, our neighbor, 30 miles down the road, got to 106. We stayed around 99. I did one more watering that night in Lakey just to keep it moist and cool. The next morning when I got up on the 15th of May, there was cooling fog all over Lakey. And that trend went on for about 11 days. So May 15th, I did waterings in Rio Frio and Lakey. The watering that afternoon in Lakey, the day after the super hot days were supposed to take us all. It was just beautiful, perfect weather, like ideal weather, 88 and summer weather, 88 and breezy is how it felt. The next day, the 16th, same thing. The amazing cooling fog was everywhere, and you could just tell the plants were vivacious. It was an amazing response from the atmosphere and the land life. I did another watering in Rio Frio. We had a super fog appear after that. And I did the afternoon watering in Rio Frio and an evening watering in Lakey, all to hold that cool. Then the 17th, I woke up to cooling fog. I did more watering in Rio Frio. Then I did an event in Lakey at a place called The Springs. Everybody should check out. We got our sunbrella right over the tree, right over the event, right over the sun as I'm doing it. And I could tell that things were shifting potentially. So I did a few more techniques, and we actually got a forecast flip that afternoon from this small watering event and the combination of these other factors, I think. Then I went back and finished up in Rio Frio. The next morning, Sunday the 18th, I did one more watering in Lakey in the cooling fog, and then I drove home and just, gave the region an A+++ because the regional greening that had resulted during this week that was supposed to be so devastating in terms of drought was beautiful. It was just gorgeous there. And it was really at this point apparent that when I watered, rain chances would appear, and transpiration would engage, and sometimes light showers would engage. We could bring in the transpiration dome, I call it, this sort of fog in the sky feeling where the light is perfect. And at the end of that week, I made a synopsis for my friend Morgan, again, my side host. I said, man, in the last 3.5 weeks since he and I had known each other, we got 2 inches of rain here in Lakey. We got drops at his place, meaning raindrops, some form of precipitation. Every 3 days, we got heat diffusion of the entire Central Texas area and system recapacitation, meaning the system was able to put that heat off, in my opinion, the vegetated system. And then we got observable cooling and fog and greening, and all these things were happening without rain. Hello. What else could cause it but forced moisture circulation being stimulated by the trickle watering from the 5-gallon bucket? Week 7 began with an event in Austin and some sponge renewals the first couple of days. Then on Wednesday, the 21st, I drove to Lakey. As I mentioned, there was cooling fog for days. When I went back, it was still cooling fog. This was hazy forest bath feeling. I did a watering in Rio Frio and a watering in Lakey, and we got rain overnight on my sites. Then I woke up that morning to cooling fog. I did 4 waterings, and we got a big rain that night. The local discussion was that rain had turned around and come back to Lakey, which is kind of what it looked like. The way it developed, it was really interesting. But it developed after my waterings back over Lakey again. Then I went home on the 23rd, did some watering in Dripping Springs area on the 24th. We had a nice hazy morning on the 25th. I drove back to Lakey the following week. But let me read you now. We were about halfway through the Central Texas projects at the end of week 7. I had used about 28,000 gallons of water total. We had again seen lots of moist air circulation, lots of greening, lots of blossoming. It's like spring had come 2 times or more. Lots of fog and softened light instead of that harsh sunburned light that people like me with fair skin really don't like in Texas. We had seen a total of about 3 inches of rain over the first 7 weeks through 13 measured events. We had brought something like, or we had helped bring something like 50 million gallons of rain to the Lakey area with those 13 events, those 3 inches. And then lastly, of course, as I mentioned, in week 6, we canceled that catastrophic heat wave. We just knocked it right out of the park. So, okay, week 8, I start watering in Lakey on Monday, May 26th. And then and Rio Frio as well. And that night, all of the Central Texas project sites, after those first 2 waterings, get rain. This is rain 15. Then I water Rio Frio, and Lakey the next day, 3 waterings. We get light rain that night over my sites from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. The next day, I water twice in Rio Frio and then head home, and we get rain 17, another rain over the Central Texas projects area. Then I watch rains move over the region for a little bit. I did sponge renewals at my home. The sponge is the tree root garden. It's a permaculture style garden where you make exceptionally biologically rich soil as a garden just for the roots of the tree at the base of the tree downslope, so that the roots and the life underground can circulate water through all that microbial that will live in the soil and burrow down in the soil and so forth. This is one of BioIntegrity's 2 signature efforts to secure forests, and it's actually called Securing Forests. So you can learn more about sponging by going to biointegrity.net/SF, Securing Forests, and you'll find out more about what sponging really is. But I was doing that and moistening those up in week 8. We just had 3 rains that week over my sites in the Lakey and Rio Frio areas. Week 9 begins with no rain in the forecast, which felt unusual for the next 10 days. Again, we're fighting long-term drought in this system. So the rains would come and then they would dry up. Meanwhile, we're also enjoying, in June, cooler than usual temperatures. So there's this juxtaposition between the cooling that's happening, the moisture that's coming in, these really light rains, these really small rains, and the fact that the system is so thirsty, it just can't get enough rainfall. Because again, it's been 15 years of exceptional drought, except for 2016. That's the only year Central Texas didn't have an exceptional drought of the last 15 years. So on the 3rd, I start watering again in Rio Frio. The next day, on the 4th of June, heavy rains are suddenly predicted for Lakey. I water Rio Frio, Lakey, Rio Frio. The next day I water Rio Frio, Lakey, Rio Frio. And so then by the 6th of June, the forecasts are starting to improve. There's more days of rain in the forecast for the area. I do 3 more waterings, Rio Frio, Lakey, Rio Frio. On the 7th, I do 2 waterings in Rio Frio and then drive home through Harper. And again, I can see that the green stuff is doing quite well. But the places where things were really damaged, the no man's land areas where trees were dead for miles, there's still lots of dry, dead stuff around. And so that's the drive home after the 2 waterings that day. And then the next day on June 8th, the Sunday, there are 8 days of rain that have shown up in the Lakey and Rio Frio forecasts. So that was pretty amazing. Week 10 is when I really started noting and shouting that, we have 0 fires. We have 0 hotspots in Central Texas. We are in a high fire danger zone, according to the National Fire Agencies. We are in exceptional drought, according to the U.S. Drought Monitor. We have rainfall deficits that are starting to diminish because of these rains, but they're extreme. They're still over 10 inches. And yet no fire, no hot spots in the entire region. Again, because forced moisture circulation, we're moving moisture gently across the system. I also noticed on Monday the 9th, this weird West Texas rain. There were a couple of events where rains were heavy in West Texas that I don't understand. It could be cloud seeding. It could be nature. There's something going on maybe with atmospheric rivers from between Mexico and the Panhandle that is concentrating in that region of Tom Green County, what I call the West Texas transition, all the way over to San Saba County. And yeah, so I had my last waterings were in Rio Frio on the 7th, and 3 nights later, they got rain over my sites, which was a good deal, but some of that rain was catastrophic in San Antonio's urban core, inside the Beltway. There was a rain over just one small area, Bytoll Creek. It was like unbelievably intense for a short amount of time, as if someone had pointed a hose right on this one area. That's the rain where there were fatalities. There was another rain similar to that near Andrews Air Force Base. That rain also had a fatality. These rains concentrated over these creeks, and then they went eastward. And that was so not in my experience of any waterings I'd ever done before. I assumed at the time, and I still do, that was just an anomaly that there's no way to predict. And I'm not, again, I hadn't watered at that point for 4 days, so I don't know that there's any way you could ever draw a direct correlation. After those intense rains, I stayed out of the waterings for a couple of more days, and then on the 14th of June, I started doing sponge renewals here at my home, where I have 50 sponges. This has taken the 5-gallon buckets and doing 5 to 25 gallons of water trickle at the trunk onto the sponge, as well as moistening things gently with the mister setting on the trunk, on the canopy, on the limbs, on just the air around the tree. And after I did that first sponge renewal on the 14th, we got a light rain that afternoon. Then I did the second sponge renewal on the 15th, and a full watering at a neighbor's house Sunday the 15th, and we got light rain that night. Those were rains number 18 and 19. And that was the end of week 10. Then came week 11. Again, 0 fires, 0 hot spots. Now we're kind of deeply into a cool June, and we're still getting these tiny rains consistently. On the 16th, I watered here in the Dripping Springs area. On the 17th, I watered in Austin. And then on the 18th, Wednesday the 18th, I returned to the Lakey Rio Frio waterings. I did a watering in Rio Frio, watering in Lakey, and a watering back in Rio Frio. The next morning, the 19th, I got up and went to do a watering in Rio Frio, and we got light rains over that site while I was doing it. Then I headed into Lakey and did the watering there. We got light rains over that site, or light drops, I should say, just drops, not a rain, over that site. And then I went back over to Rio Frio, my other site there, at Rio Frio RV Park, and we got drops there. So these light rains and just drops, I all count as one rain, rain number 20. It's directly correlated to my waterings. Then the next day, the 20th, I watered Rio Frio, and Lakey, and then headed home. Then that was on the 20th. On the 21st, they got a light rain at my sites in both Rio Frio and Lakey. Also on the 21st, I was back in the Austin area. I did a watering again in Austin. 22nd, I did a watering in Austin. 23rd, I did a watering here in Dripping Springs area and a watering in Austin. We got conversion that afternoon, which is when you can tell there's a shift. Things are going from being intense to suddenly kind of relaxed and mild. It's like the atmosphere has been beaten by the influence of a moist, circulating ground ecology. The next day on the 24th, then, we had rain over my sites in East Austin. And then I came and did a watering again here in Dripping Springs. We got rain over the sites that night in Dripping Springs. So that's 2 more rains that day, the 24th, rain 22 and rain 23. Then on the 25th, I watered in Austin again. We got rain on the drops on us while I was talking with this amazing lady there. Then I went, that was rain 24. Then I went to my house and we got light rain over the house also. That's rain 25. Interestingly, I think, in terms of the horrific floods that came on the 4th of July, the flash flooding began, as far as my deep research on this, in Juarez, near El Paso, on the 26th of June, the next day. I was unaware of it at the time. It's a long way away, and this would have been connected to, I think, Hurricane Barry, that flash flood. But the fact that it happened then is really unusual. On the 26th of June, I did 2 more waterings, one in Austin, one here in Dripping Springs on the 27th, one in Austin, one here in Dripping Springs. And on the 28th, I went back to Lakey, did another watering. This whole time, we're not getting rain. 29th, I watered Rio Frio, Rio Frio, Rio Frio. And that was the end of the week. But I stayed in Lakey for the ending of the Central Texas project. So now we're at week 13. It's June 30th, Monday, June 30th. We're still 0 fires, 0 hot spots in Central Texas. And I do waterings that morning in Rio Frio, and then a watering that afternoon in Rio Frio. And during the afternoon watering, we get 10 light showers, 10 light rains during that watering, that 3.5, 4 hour period. So those rains I call rain number 26. Also on the 30th, there was a flash flood in Chihuahua, Mexico, which I think is important to note, that these flash floods were creeping towards us. On the 1st of July, then the next morning, there was rain overnight in Lakey. This is rain number 27, after I had done the waterings there. And I did the final watering in Rio Frio at Rio Frio RV. We got light rains during that watering, and then I went over to that afternoon to Camp Live Oak, where all of this began, and it's one of my favorite places on earth, and I recommend everyone check out Camp Live Oak in Lakey. It's just a great spot. And as I was watering in Camp Live Oak, this is the final watering of the South Central Texas waterings. I went back to our resurrection tree, did 1 more watering on those 2 trees. And as I was beginning that watering, rain went out of the forecast. And as I was doing that watering and wrapping it up, I'd literally say into the camera, I think that's it. I don't think we're going to get the rain. And I was hoping that we would get rain again. That's Tuesday the 1st, that we would get rain that evening, rain the next day, and rain the next day, the 2nd and the 3rd. But I left Lakey that afternoon, drove back to Austin. The next morning, there were rains at my Lakey sites and Rio Frio sites. I did, that's rain 28. I did waterings at my neighbors here in Dripping Springs, right next door. That night, there were light rains at home, as again, watering number 29. And then on the 3rd, there were rains here again at home within 24 hours. Each of those rains, and Lakey got rains each of those days. So I just count that up as a total of 30 correlatable rains. You could argue that there were quite a few more precipitation events. There were drops here and there that I don't count, but when there's multiple drops or a significant transpiration rain, I count that as a full rain event, just 1 full rain event. Of course, the flash flooding began out of Big Bend, it looks like, on the 3rd of July, and then kind of went into this incredibly baffling pattern. But it was such a close proximity in time and everything that I had to spend 5 or so weeks looking at things, thinking about things, to be sure that we didn't have a direct connection to the flooding events. Obviously, flooding events happen in Central Texas. Obviously, we helped bring an end to what would have been a really rough June, a really rough May, and a really rough April. But in all of my project experiences, I've done 11 regional projects now. I've never seen that this has the ability to stimulate anything close to a torrential rain. We've gotten at most a 2-inch rain here and there. And that was during this project primarily. So I'm headed to Arizona today. I am excited to get out there. They've had a little bit of rain last week. They've got a cloudy week this week. We should be able to get good gentle rain moving over the area. There have been catastrophic super fires in Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, California. Idaho, Washington, and Oregon are also blazing. The only region of the country, the western U.S. that's got trees, big forest, that's not severely on fire is Southwest Oregon, where I spent 6 weeks last fall and summer. I started in around August 9 there last year. That's interesting because I put a lot of time into that area and they're not getting the fires. The reason I put a lot of time into it was because they were the worst fire region in the entire country last year. And now they're doing pretty well. So may this good fortune piece continue. I'm going to keep on with the watering. I'm going to head west with it and try and show people again that these gentle techniques deliver gentle results that people can replicate to eliminate forest fire and wildfire forever due to drought, and to put our trees and our landscapes back into the best possible condition, into an optimal state. The main technique, the main reason I use this simple technology is because it's the best way to imitate rainfall. It just trickle, 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 trickle for 30 minutes or more per bucket. And the root ball of the tree can really absorb everything it needs to from the water. Take it in. It's just the same thing as you being able to drink out of a cup instead of you trying to drink out of water flying through the air. It's a much more efficient way to help the trees, to bring the cooling and moisture circulation to the landscape, and rain is a reliable byproduct. With all that said, I thank you for your support. We need more of it. There's really not much funding going on right now. I'm very, very shoestring, and any and every bit of help will help. If you have questions, please contact me anytime, and the report that I have written on the Central Texas projects is available in a link below in the comments. If you want to get into more depth and sort of technical type conversation about the projects, please check that out. And please visit biointegrity.net and water your trees gently as soon as possible. Today would be a good day. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Chris. I will see you in Arizona.